Welcome to the struggle zone, man. Check this out. What I'm about to do, man, is give y'all some insight on this little topic that I wanted to talk about. You hear a lot of people always speak on how the movie Roots was plagiarized, right? But you never hear anybody go into detail by every other aspect of Roots, because and my purpose for doing this particular video is because I've heard guys say that Alex Haley's, I've heard people say that although the story of Roots was plagiarized from a book called The African, they don't change the fact that Alex Haley traces his lineage. What I'm telling you, that Alex Haley made everything up. He made everything up. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show y'all a couple of documents to prove my point. And people have been knowing about this for the longest, but this constantly been regurgitating the same information over and over and over. So now people start to believe that it's true. So what I want to do, I'm about to pull something up, and I'm gonna show y'all a couple documents to show you that not only was it plagiarized, but the stories, the plots, all that was made up. It was created. He lied. Now that y'all about to find out that this individual lied about all this information, right? Now you're gonna have to ask yourself this: if he lied about that, what else were we lied to about? What else did the Europeans lie to us about? Because you got to understand, when you create movies and films, it takes a lot of manpower to do it. It takes money, resources. It takes a lot of time. It has to be well thought out. So this wasn't something that they just threw together. So I'm not gonna talk too long. I'm gonna be reading some a couple things. So let me pull this up right quick. Alright. The celebrated roots of a lie. The abstract. Virtually every genealogical claim in Haley's story was false, Philip Nolan has written. None of Haley's early writings contains any reference to his mythic ancestor, the African named Kunta Kinte. Indeed, Haley's later notes give his family name as Kansi, not Kinte. A long suppressed tape of the famous session in which Haley found Kunta Kinte through the recitation of an African griot proves that, as BBC producer James Kent noted, the villagers were threatened by members of Haley's party. These turned out to be senior government officials desperate to ensure that things go smoothly. In 1997, Haley's older brother George was named U.S. ambassador to Gambia, his family's supposed homeland. Then Vice President Al Gore said at the time, George Haley is the direct descendant of Kunta Kinte, added Gore. Haley's appointment would complete a cycle of history. Here's the full text. On Friday, NBC will air a special commemorating the 25th anniversary of the landmark miniseries based on Alex Haley's book Roots. Ironically, the original series aired on ABC, but officials if the network took a pass on broadcasting the tribute. What's truly amazing, however, is that Roots is receiving a reverential tribute to all at all. What's really amazing, however, is that Roots is receiving a reverential tribute at all. For while the miniseries was a remarkable and important piece of television, the book on which it was based has now been widely exposed as a historical hoax. Unfortunately, the general public is largely aware of how Hailey's monumental family's autobiography, stretching back to 18th century Africa, has been discredited. Indeed, a 1997 BBC documentary exposed of Hailey's work has been banned by U.S. television networks, especially PBS, which would normally welcome such a program. Coincidentally, the Roots anniversary comes amid the growing scandal over disclosures of historian Stephen Ambrose's multiple incidents of plagiarism. Because, as Hailey himself was forced to acknowledge, a large section of his book, including the plot, main character, and scores of whole pages, were lifted from The African, a 1967 novel by white author Hal Colander. But plagiarism is the least of the problems in Roots, and they would likely have remained largely unknown had journalist Philip Nolan not undertaken a remarkable study of Hailey's private papers shortly before they were auctioned off. See, let me show you this, right? This is the problem. See, they was trying to hide it and conceal it, this whole Roots fiasco. But just so happened, a guy by the name of Philip Noble was interested in seeing the papers. But me personally, I don't think he was just trying to nail Hailey as a lie. I think he was just curious to see the documentation himself. And he came to find out that it was flawed, man. That's what they saying. The result was featured in a devastating 1993 cover piece in the Village Voice. It confirmed from Hailey's own notes earlier claims that the alleged history of the book was a near total invention. Let me read that again for you, man. He said the result was featured in a devastating 1993 cover piece in the Village Voice. It confirmed from Hailey's own notes, earlier claims that the alleged history of the book was a near total invention. He made the whole thing up. He made the shit up. They said that the whole story that Alice Hailey put out was made up. And you know what the problem is? There's a deeper problem to this, in my opinion, is that all these Afrocentric scholars never said anything. Not the James Smalls, not the Infodishis, not the Dr. Benz. There's only one person who mentioned something, but I don't think he came out publicly with it. And we're going to get into that too. We're going to let y'all hear what John Henry Clark said about this. That Jabari, who's used Roots as a damn near as a method to tell you that this is our history. They made it up. So we're going to get into it. Alright, let me continue. Virtually every genealogical claim in Hailey's story was false. Noble has written. None of Hailey's early writing contains any reference to his mythic ancestor, the African name Kunta Kinte. Indeed, Haley's later notes give his family name Kante, not Kinte. In a long suppressed tape of the famous session in which Haley found Kunta Kinte through the recitation of an African griot proves that, as BBC producer James Kent noted, the villagers were threatened by members of Haley's party. These turned out to be senior government officials desperate to ensure that things go smoothly. Haley added Kent specifically asked for a story that would fit his predetermined American narrative. Historical experts who checked Haley's genealogical research discovered that, as one put it, Haley got everything wrong in his pre-Civil War lineage, and none of his plantation ancestors existed. Wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that none of his plantation ancestors existed? They say he got it all wrong. None of them existed. 182 pages have no basis in fact. 182 pages have no basis in fact. This is the problem, people. This is the problem. But we're going to get deeper. And Zoe Williams will say, let's go deeper. Given this damning evidence, you'd think Haley's halo would long ago have vanished. But given this week's TV tribute, he remains a literary icon, publicly at least. Meaning, publicly, he's respected and as a literary icon, but in private, behind closed doors, they know this dude was full of BS. They knew he was lying. Why? So now you got to ask yourself, why was it so important for them to continue to protect this guy's career and to tell us that all of us come from Africa? These are questions you got to ask, man. How come none of these Pan-Africans ever talk about this? Why they never say anything? Why are they allowing this to be perpetuated and continue this lie? These are the questions that you got to ask. Let's go deeper. The judge who presided over Haley's plagiarism case admitted that I did not want to destroy him and so allowed him to settle quietly. Even though he acknowledged Haley had repeatedly perjured himself in court, so he in court lying. He lying in court. And the judge even acknowledged that this dude continued to lie. The Pulitzer Prize Board had refused to reconsider Haley's prize awarded in 1977. See, even the Pulitzer Prize committee, even they wanted this stuff to continue. So why is all these people covering this up? That's the question you got to ask. And what former Colombian President William McGill, then board member, was acknowledged as was an example of inverse racism by a bunch of white liberals embarrassed by our makeup. So now they trying to say that all people just lying and people just trying to attack Adelaide. Man, no, this dude was lying. Yet the uniqueness of Roots is that it was presented as a factual history, albeit with fictional embellishments. Haley himself stressed that the details came from his family's oral history and had been corroborated by outside documents. But check this out. Guess who was Alex Haley's friend? Henry Louis Gates. They're finna talk about it right now. But Professor Henry Louis Gates of Harvard, a Haley friend, concedes that it's time to speak candidly, and that most of us feel it's highly unlikely that Alex actually found the village from whence his ancestors sprang. Yet even today, much of America, both black and white, continue to perpetuate the roots myth. Let me say this. Let me read that line for you again. It says, yet even today, much of America, both black and white, continues to perpetuate the roots myth. Does that remind y'all of anybody? St. Kofa came out and he was talking about roots. Jabari used roots as an example throughout history. Why all this documentation, these guys claim to be scholars, why they still perpetuating this roots myth? Why they still doing it? Because they not working for the best interests of our people, man. That's why they doing it. In 1997, Haiti's older brother George was named U.S. ambassador to Gambia, his family's supposed homeland. Then Vice President Al Gore said at the time, George Haley is the direct descendant of Kunta Kinte, added Gore. Haiti's appointment will complete a cycle of history. Haiti's defenders insist that the literal truth of roots is less important than its larger truth. That, as Gates has put it, roots is work of the imagination. Roots is a work of the imagination. It was an important event because it captured everyone's imaginations. True, Haiti's literary fraud doesn't alter the historical reality of slavery and its evils, or the pernicious lasting effect it had on America. But there's a pernicious paternalism at work when it's suggested that an ostensible work of history shouldn't be held to account merely because its heart is in the right place. Haley himself admitted he was caught up in the sweep and the swell of the overall thing, saying that the quest for a symbolic history of a people just swept me like a twig atop a rushing water. That's a problem. This is why they always tell you, if you don't accept this narrative, that there's a lot of self-hatred, that you hate yourself because you want to be anything else but African. This is the thing that they do. Now listen to what John Henry Clark said. Listen to what John Henry Clark said about Alex Haley. Listen. But as the late John Henry Clark, Dean of Afrocentric Scholars, who admitted that he cried real tears when I realized that Haley was less than authentic, argued. We don't need no more fakers. We don't need no more phonies. We can take our tea with or without sugar. John Henry Clark said Alex Haley was a phony, that he was a fake. You know what I'm saying? That he was a fraud, he was a phony. But how come Jabari is still using it? How come he's still using that as a reference? This is what y'all need to start asking on people. Why is St. Kofa still using it? It's crazy, man. Haley, his popularity won't dim, although he's acknowledged his plagiarism. These is where they got it from. These are the sources. Damn, so this is what I'm trying to tell y'all, man. These guys constantly lying to our people, man. But this other document that I'm finna get into is going to go a whole lot deeper. So let me pull that up right now for y'all, man. Pull up the National Genealogical Society quarterly. So let me bring my screen back up. Do this. So as y'all can see, man, so far, man, we kind of digging in this thing a little bit deeper, right? As y'all can see, man, this dude lied. Even the judge said he know he was lying. Know that he continued to lie on the stand. Know he plagiarized this guy's work. Knew that he made this stuff up. Knew he continued to perjure himself on the stand. But they don't want to ruin his career. Why are they all of a sudden so concerned about ruining a brother? When have they ever been concerned about ruining or taking one of us down? They thrive off of that. They thrive off of it. They didn't want to do it because it was a larger plan behind it. That's why it was a larger plan behind it. And they've been using that as a tool for propaganda on our people for a long time. And it's worked. Because you got Negroes still believing that it's true. Now, I don't blame those people who just don't know. But when you have individuals coming out and talking about that they're scholars, they have some superior education, but they're not even telling you this information, that's a problem. That's what I have a problem with. Because they're lying. They're lying to our people, man. They're lying. You got to ask yourself, why did they have to lie? If all this stuff was happening, why did they have to make something up? Why did they have to make it up? Now, I know some niggas are gonna say, well, they said that they gonna say, that don't mean that slavery didn't happen. I'm not saying slavery didn't happen. I know it happened. It's documented. But just because your people may have been enslaved, don't mean that they was all from Africa. You have to show me your people by name, documented, that they came here on a slave ship. I'm not saying they did. I'm not saying they didn't. What I'm saying is prove it. Because Alex Haley took something that somebody told him, and he had absolutely no documentation to back it up. He had no documentation to back it up. And that's the problem. That's the problem. So I'm gonna go get into this other document, and I'm gonna show y'all some other things, man. And on this next one, they're gonna get us into some detail about his lineage, who the people were that they found in his notes, what year they was supposed to came over here. We're gonna show you something that's gonna shock you. It's just gonna shock you. Real talk. Real talk. We gotta show you something, man. It's gonna really shock you. So, enough talking. Let's get to walking. You dig? Now, let me go. The National Genealogical Society quarterly. The genealogist assessment of Alex Haley's roots by Elizabeth Shawn Mills, FASG, and Gary B. Mills. Now, the American Bicentennial celebration spawned hundreds of new family of histories, thousands of bumper stickers, and millions of lapel buttons, lapel buttons, but nothing had the tremendous impact upon the sight of America as the Alex Haley's novel Roots, the saga of an American family. When Haley cried, "My God, I found you," Kunta Kinte, he tugged the heartstrings of the uprooted peoples of America, and cheers arose from all cultures in which ancestors are revered, as is true with any work of such importance. It was also challenged, and public schism resulted from those who accepted Roots and those who were disappointed by its flaws. As Hamlet might have expressed the issue, to believe or not to believe, that is the question. For those who are sincerely interested in the field of genealogy, the question goes much deeper. At stake is the future of genealogy as a legitimate scholarly pursuit. At stake is the whole body of standards, the academic code of ethics, which is at least developing in genealogy. At stake is the right of genealogists to use any and all of the best archives of America and receive the same degree of respect and the same degree of assistance that the scholar of history routinely receives. Among archivists and professional historians alike, genealogists have suffered a reputation of academic mediocrity for a naive acceptance of anything told them or any. Hold on, I lost my place. Hold on. Okay. Among archives, professional historians alike, genealogists have suffered a reputation of academic mediocrity for a naive acceptance of anything told them or anything that appears in print, a reputation for shallow research, amateurish methodology, and poor standards. This general charge is no longer just. Countless genealogists are doing superb research. They have fought an uphill battle for several decades to introduce richer standards into the study of genealogy, to convince the millions of genealogical newcomers of the crucial importance of these standards. Then came Roots. Hey, he said, we done got all this fighting trying to make sure we uphold a certain standards in genealogy. And they thought they was doing well, educating newcomers on how important it is. And then here come this Negro with this goddamn Roots. Then came Roots, a book advertised as an authentic family history, as the ultimate expression of black experience in America. Despite the caveats of some leading black historians, the saga has been hailed as the epitome of genealogical success, even though serious questions was raised about the validity of Haley's African and American episodes. Roots has been adopted within public schools and university as a tool for teaching of Southern and black history. Say, listen to this. This is why everybody think they come from Africa. This is why. Listen to this again. Roots has been adopted within public schools and universities, Cornell as a tool for teaching of Southern and Black history, and it has been used as a banner by avant-garde historians who claim to find more reality in oral tradition than in documentary evidence. Niggas at Cornell and other universities too. Listen to that. It has been adopted within public schools and universities as a tool for teaching of Southern and Black history. Shameful. Shameful, man. Shameful, shameful, shameful. It has also been accepted unquestionably by legions of neophyte Black genealogists. Naive as all genealogists initially are, who believe roots should be the model for their own work. Wow. They say if you believe this bullshit that Alex Taylor put out, you are naive. This is what they're saying, man. This is what they're saying. Y'all just accept anything people hand to y'all just because it makes you feel a certain way. That's crazy. Let's go deeper. The question of roots validity as a Black historian is an important one to genealogists of all races. Although some Americans have been conditioned to superimpose racial division upon almost all aspects of life, such academic distinctions cannot exist in the science of genealogy. Wow. It says no ethnic group has a monopoly on oral tradition or documentation, literacy or illiteracy, mobility or stability among all peoples. Each individual and family is unique, yet certain circumstances are basic to humanity and can be found in every ethnic group. It is true at the same time that certain procedures in the pursuit of Black genealogy do differ from those in the pursuit of English genealogy. That the pursuit of ancestral research among white Creoles of Louisiana is different from that among the Pilgrims of Massachusetts. That research in Virginia differs from research in Tennessee. That research on Black families in Alabama differs from Black families in New York. Yes, that's absolutely true. When you're doing your genealogy, everything that happened the same did not happen the same in every area, in every state in this nation. They happen differently. They happen differently because it had adapted to the scenery or that geographical location that you was at. You did. Geographical and cultural differences do exist, but they coexist with the basic similarities of all mankind. If genealogy is to be accepted as a legitimate field of study of the same value to society as geography or diplomatic history, it must be governed by a set of standards. One set of standards that must apply to everyone. Moreover, every genealogist worthy of the name must be able to discern good genealogy from poor genealogy. And no one can accept mediocrity without significantly damaging the progress that the science of genealogy has made. Every family historian needs to possess the ability to critically appraise the work that others have done, to learn from the strengths of others and to profit from their mistakes. The critical analysis of Alex Taylor's roots provides to all genealogists the unparalleled opportunity to debate the application of standards, the effectiveness of various methodologies, the crucial importance of interpretation, and the limits of literary license. See, don't you always see these conscious community Negroes always talking about proper methodology, but they quote people whose methodology was completely poor and ridiculous, and they put that on the people and want us to think that they're using proper methodology. If they are using Alex Haley as a credible source, that means that we have to question everything that they've been saying. Everything, we have to question it. If they are using Alex Haley as a credible source, then we need to question everything that you've ever been told by these guys. Everything. Period. Point blank. A half a dozen years ago, I was in the same position as many university professors, Southern and Black history. The parents of Roots breathed fresh student interest into the humanities. A generation of youth who equated history with a boring litany of dates, wars, and elections suddenly realized that history was real. Alex Haley has proven to them that it could be as exciting as anything the television networks ever produced from sheer imagination. Students of Black history and Southern history wanting to study roots rather than Frank Owsley's The Mind of the South or John Hope Franklin's The Free Negro in North Carolina. Okay, as I began to contemplate the best way to legitimately incorporate this novel into a university-level study of history, as I compared Haley's depiction of slave society with the concept that I have drawn from my own research and writing, as I reviewed the realms of press literature that were generated, and as I discussed the issue with my colleagues, there existed one element that troubled me more than any other. Certainly, historical inaccuracy existed in Roots. No one's work is entirely free from error, but even the extent of the magnitude of the obvious problems found within Roots were not as describing as a fundamental deficiency that I noted among academic historians and genealogists. Professor Oscar Handon of Harvard best expressed this problem. Although he used the word anthropologist instead of genealogist in his commentary, the historians say, well, the anthropology must be correct. And the anthropologists say, well, the history must be correct. But if you add them together, there are a lot of interesting elements that raise the question of how a book like this can be successful. The crux of the problem was that no one had considered these elements together. Both the supporters and the detractors of Roots on the academic level were scholars of either history or genealogy or anthropology. Each recognized the problem within his own realm of expertise, but did not realize the extent of the problem overall. There did not exist a cadre of scholars in Black history who were qualified to judge good genealogical work, nor did there exist a body of genealogical experts with solid training in Black history. As I particularly discussed this deficiency with my wife and colleague Elizabeth Shawn Mills, who had been working with Southern Black genealogy for many years, it became interestingly obvious to me that I could not consciously teach as history such a controversial novel without first resolving the interdisciplinary conflicts that existed. We also realized that we were in a unique position. While each of us individually faced the same handicaps as other historians and genealogists, we did have, in a combination, a requisite background to make an interdisciplinary analysis of roots as a tool for the teaching of history and genealogy. Man, this shit is deep, man. It's deep. The task was to consume years rather than the weeks or months that we anticipated, and it proved to be on half a dual analysis of eventually appeared. Our work stopped at the water's edge. We backtracked through Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia. The Afro-American ancestry presented in roots, as well as that of the masters who allegedly owned Haiti's progenitors. Our findings exceeded the most dire projections we might have made, were published in the Virginia Magazine of History and Biography as the lead article in volume 89, January 1981. Meanwhile, separate work was being done on Haiti's Gambian Chronicle by Professor Donald R. Wright of the State University of New York, Cortland, a specialist in African prehistory with extensive experience in the collection of Gambian oral traditions. In the course of one of his field trips to the Senegambia a decade ago, Wright in fact had interviewed the same Geoffrey Elder Fofana who had spawned for Haiti to tell the Kunta Kinte origins. Dr. Wright's analysis of Haiti's African experience appeared in Professor Jones' History of Africa in the same year that Elizabeth and my article appeared. The following genealogical assessment of roots draws principally from these two studies, although time limitations preclude any possibility of presenting a complete discussion of our findings for those of Wright. So what they saying is, this guy, Wright, Dr. Wright, he backtracked Alex Haley. He went back and talked to the same people that Alex Haley said he got his information from. He got a different story. Oral history versus documentation. The issue of oral history versus documentation is the essence of almost all problems which Haley encountered in his genealogical efforts, and it will, in the same manner, determine the ultimate success or failure of the work of any would-be genealogist. Family tradition is invaluable as a beginning point in the research process. It holds the clues to ancestral identities, to the places and time frames in which those ancestors might be found, and to the special circumstances in which they may have been involved. Utilizing this manner, tradition is a power tool, but it can also be the proverbial milestone around one's neck if one exalts tradition to a state of sacredness that it does not possess. Just like in my arms. Haley wrote eloquently of his personal despair as his work failed to bear fruit. Listen to this. Alex Haley wrote eloquently of his personal despair as his work failed to bear fruit. As he made one Atlantic crossing trying to envision the emotions of his legendary Kinte, the same thought occurred to Haiti that came to some captive slaves in the Middle Passage who contemplated their hopeless situation, that of plummeting himself into the ocean. Yet Haiti's chains were self-made. He said Haiti's chains were self-made. He had bound himself to the burden of proving oral tradition, every holy word of it. His crusade was destined for failure. See, he believed everything somebody told him without any kind of documentation to back up what he was saying. He didn't have any documentation to prove anything. There is no such thing as the gospel according to Aunt Lizzie. Any genealogist who successfully traces a family lineage accepts this fact. Generations are omitted with extreme frequency in the oral begats of a family, as it appears to have happened in Haley's case. Anecdotes undergo metamorphosis, often to the point that they change substance entirely. Such transformations are to be expected. Aging memories develop wrinkles just as people do. Handed down stories like heirloom silver. Like heirloom silver. Heirloom silver take on a patina of their own, pattern of their own. To question Aunt Lizzie, to insist about documenting each detail, is not to question her integrity or to impugn her dignity as Haley has expressed it. Now let me stop right there, right? Let me stop right there for a minute. I want to get into this right quick. Let me get into this right quick, right? That's a good point, man. Because let me tell you something. When I was doing I'm still doing my genealogy, but last year I went home from Arkansas. So I went back home, right, to do my genealogy. So I'm sitting outside on a carport with my mama and my auntie, right? And my mama gave me a packet of my great grandmother's line, right? And my auntie gave me a packet of my great grandfather's line. So I have two packets showing my lineage. You dig what I'm saying? I'm talking about pictures, their names, the lifestyle that they lived, all this would help me out a lot, right? So I'm explaining this because I want to make a point that they absolutely right. Sometimes, man, you got to research. You got to be honest. You can't just jump on things just because it sounds good. And that's not just for everybody. That's for myself too. I got to check myself too, not to get emotional and just deal with the information, search for the information. For example, right? My auntie was telling, she said, we got Irish in our blood. She said we're Indian. She looked me dead in my eyes and she told me, she said, we do have some Irish in our blood, but we are Indian. That's what she told me. That's what she told me. Irish in our blood, but we're Indian. But because I had done research on the area of the state that I was going to, on the western parts of Arkansas, I assumed that that's my people's from. At the time, I didn't know that they was from other places. I just thought that we've always been in that particular area, right? So I asked her, I said, well, what tribe do we belong to? She said, we Cherokee. So I told her, because like I said, I've done research on the area. I told her, I said, well, Cherokee wasn't in that area. You know what I'm saying? I said, it was another tribe in that area during that time period, and that tribe was the Caddo tribe, was in that area. But when I went to the county where my people was from, and I started digging and started getting this information, which I have to. Well, I'm going back soon, but I started digging into this information after I made it back to Georgia. Got on my file, started digging this information. I kind of find out that on one side of my family, my great grandmother's line, her grandparents and her great grandparents are all from Mississippi. Her grandfather, which is her mother's father, was born in Mississippi in 1829. His parents was born in Mississippi. So that line is from Mississippi. You dig what I'm saying? But when I look at my great grandfather's line, his father is from Alabama, and his mother is from right here in Georgia. I'll be going to the archives this next week to dig up some information on that. See if I can find something on that. See, I'm out here in Georgia, and I didn't even know that we got some lineage right here in Georgia. You dig what I'm saying? And I didn't know. So when I start finding all this information out, I'm like, damn. I had to pick up the phone and call my mama. My auntie happened to be over there at the house. They was over there cackling or whatever they do. I had to tell her, I said, you know what? You was probably right. You was probably right. Because I know Cherokee was in those areas. You dig what I'm saying? In Georgia. Yeah, I knew it. Now Cherokee did come to Arkansas, but they came later on. But I'm not going to get into all that right now. But I just wanted to make that point that sometimes, man, you got to be honest and be like, wait a minute. Okay, this particular situation don't make sense. You dig what I'm saying? Or these dates and these times is not adding up. So this individual can't be related to me. You dig what I'm saying? Because when I have certain people in my lineage that I come up with the dates when they was born and the dates when they was in these areas and their children's children and all these different people. If all that's not lining up, then I might have to just push that individual to the side. You know what I'm saying? Push that individual to the side momentarily until I can find something else that matches. You know what I'm saying? Genealogy is not easy. It's not hard, but it takes time. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to be in some stumbling blocks. And Adam Saley ran into a lot of stumbling blocks and he just ignored it completely. You can't do that. Because if you get it wrong, then you just basically destroy a whole lineage. You dig what I'm saying? And they're going to explain it in this document too. That you can't do that. You got to accept the fact, okay, these things are not adding up. So if they're not adding up, I need to push it to the side and keep digging until I find it. That's what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm doing. I'm not jumping on something just because it sounds good and makes me feel good. I'm taking the time out, do the research, and get it right. So I can pass something on to the rest of my family. They can know who we are. That's my job. So now, I'm going to get back to this, man. Alright. Alright. To question Aunt Lizzie is to insist upon documenting each detail. It's not to question her integrity or to impugn her dignity, as Haley has expressed it. Indeed, the issue of questioning the word of another is an intrinsic one to Ruth's problem. To Ruth's success into the course of genealogy as well, Haley developed such an attachment to his old aunt's story that he could accept no documentary evidence that deviated from it. See, that's what I was just telling y'all. He just believed everything she told him and didn't question nothing. That's what we do with this roots. We've accepted everything that they told us. They haven't provided us with any documentation to prove any of that shit, and we just accepted it. We just accepted it. That deviated from the integrity of his family tradition was not to be questioned. When Haley succeeded in convincing himself that documentary evidence was invalid, when Haley succeeded in convincing himself that documentary evidence was invalid and that the family sketchy traditions and all the documentation needed, he announced to the world that he had traced his roots. Wow. And most of the world accepted his pronouncement. To do otherwise would have been to question his integrity. Genealogists for centuries have adhered to the same tenet. They have accepted everything handed down to them. Everything they read. Everything any other genealogist told them without documentation. We've accepted roots without no documentation to prove it. Without any documentation to prove it, we've accepted it. Because to do so otherwise would be to question the other person's integrity. Genealogical scholarship has now advanced past this point. The most significant achievements made in the field of genealogy and the acceptance of genealogy as a worthwhile subject of study. Some has come about because genealogists have recognized the absolute necessity of documenting every fact, regardless of who or what its source. Haley himself recognized the need for documentation. Indeed, he made countless declarations that his work was extensively documented until it was proven otherwise. Unfortunately, since that time, his advice to fledgling black genealogy has been: slaves was sold and shifted much like livestock, so the records were spurred, nor did records reflect things like children born from unions between white masters and black women. So to expect these records to provide an accurate account is pure naivete when it comes to black genealogy. Well-kept oral history is without question the best source. See what I'm saying? Sound like fucking Pan-African. The experienced historian and genealogist can only interpret this statement as a cop-out, an attempt to excuse inadequate research. They said all this stuff about you can't find documentation. This is why a lot of guys, when we start talking about the indigenous information or aboriginal information, these guys, I've heard people say, well, you can't even find those records don't exist, when they haven't even done a study. They've done a minimum of research and then dismiss everything. You can't do that. You got to dig into that shit. So they even, the historians, the main people, the experienced historians in the United States saying this is only a cop-out for inadequate research. And an inference that double standards in scholarship should exist because of past wrongs. In truth, records of slaves were sporadic, but the same handicap is faced by genealogists of all races whose ancestors were in the advance guard of the ever-moving frontier. Contrary to Haley's assertion, countless records exist to document white paternity of children born to slave women and to white maternity of part black children. Haley's ultimate pronouncement that well-kept oral history, wherever that is the best source, cannot be accepted by any knowledgeable, successful student of family history. And if the practitioners of this field permit someone so misinformed to stand as a spokesman for the science of genealogy, then irreparable harm will be done to the next generation of genealogy, and the progress that this generation has made in raising the standards of genealogical scholarship will be eroded. The validity of tradition is a pure reflection of historical truth, knows neither racial nor genealogical bounds. In the past, genealogists who placed great emphasis on documentation of American lineages often relaxed their standards when they went abroad. Some have felt that they are closer to the truth, while others assert that greater care has been taken in older countries will check the quality of oral accounts. Such genealogies are naive. The crossing of an ocean to Africa or to Europe is not a holy rite passage beyond which oral accounts are sanctified. In Europe, there is not heard the American expression to lie like a dog. There is said to lie like a genealogist. The fabrication of lineages for personal reasons, the embroidering of sagas to make immoral heroes of mere men have been traced basis to all peoples of the world. The undiscriminating genealogists will, like Haley, fall victim to scams in some cases and to his own aptitude in others. The search for Gambian roots. They better get into Africa and what Haley did and what he went through. That's what they about to do right now. Alright, now, having failed through the use of American resources to document the origin and the transportation of his legendary kente, Haley went to Africa. Although he was aware that he would have to rely upon oral traditions, his methodology violated the basic rules of obtaining oral information. Wow, he violated basic rules. After a scholar of African linguistics suggested to him the geographical area from which his handed down words and phrases apparently came, Haley appeared at the doors of the region's officials, told them the story he had learned at his old aunt's knee, and then they went out into the countryside to question and griot the official oral historians of the genealogy of the villages. Predictably, one village interpreter listened to Haley's story, recognized the potential of the opportunity, and replied and answered, but yes, of course I remember that story. Unfortunately for Haley and for the credibility of Roots, for Fauna, the griot was not a griot. This is for Saint Kofu, who's saying that Alex Haley still traces his roots. It's bullshit. It's a lie. Just because you want to believe something, you've been told something your whole life, don't make it true. That's why you guys sound like religious fanatics. Y'all are religious fanatics. Y'all talking about Christians and Muslims when y'all are 10 times worse. Because y'all do it with an arrogance that you know it all. He had failed to meet community standards for that important post. In all his years, he had not earned the respect of his village. When Professor Wright interviewed Fofana, Shortly after hailing, the Jaffa elder showed no inclination to recite long or short genealogies of any family. He was eager, however, to speak of the Kunta Kinte episode to the extent that in the entire interview, Kunta Kinte was the only individual about whom Fofana provided any specific information. Yeah, I recorded nothing of the kind of information that Haley received. Before the interview was over, two inhabitants of Jaffa who had been listening to the question and answers began responding, but because they believed they knew some things better than Fofana, the latter yielded his position. On a second trip to Jaffa, Professor Wright did not ask to speak to Fofana by name. Instead, he asked to speak to the person best versed in the history of the village and its family. According to Wright, I was taken to speak to 4 other people. Fofana's name never came up. I was taken to speak to 4 other people. Fofana's name never came up because he was fucking crook. He was hustling. He got down on Alex Haley. That's what happened. Even more disturbing doubts over the reliability of Haley's self-styled griot emerged when it became known that a representative of the Gambian National Archives had visited Fofana and taped his oral account of the Kinte's genealogy, something Haley did not do. Wow. So he didn't record the information. According to reporter Mark Ottaway of the London Times, who compared the tape with Haley's published account, there were numerous genealogical contradictions in the 2 versions of the archives tape. Fofana identified Kinte's father as Lemon, and Ruth's Kinte's father is Amoro. On the archives tape, Kinte's father was the first in his family in the village of Jaffa and Ruth. Kunte's grandfather was the first Kinte in the village. On the archives tape, Kinte's brothers were Usla, Suwandi, and Omar. Within Ruth, they were Lamin, Suwandu, and Mahdi. The credibility of Haley's African begats has been totally destroyed. The credibility of Haley's African begats has been totally destroyed. But for the genealogical world, the implications are broader. Was Haley's experience a fluke created by his naivete in telling first the story that he hoped to be told? If so, the research with more sophisticated methodology should be able to locate an authentic griot. Or is it even possible to find an oral historian who can provide the type of African family history which Haley asks us to believe? Berkeley Sidibe of the Gambian Archives allegedly wrote Haley in 1973 to warn him that he had been duped. So he wrote a letter to the Gambian, from the Gambian Archive to Alex Haley, tell him, man, you got played, basically. And in the letter, he stated, to get a long, detailed, and sustained narrative from a village elder is rare. Professor Wright, who has interviewed some 100 Gambian griots and elder states, from often disappointing experience, I learned that oral traditions of the lower Gambians simply do not contain specific information about real people living before the 19th century. So if you are trying to find people that were living in the 1700s, like then you might not gonna find it. You probably don't find it. In a historical, rather genealogical sense, the significance of Haley's saga goes far beyond the validity of his alleged begat. Haley insists that the historical essence of his work is valid and that Joffrey narrative is an expression of the black experience in Africa. Both reporter Ottaway and Professor Willie Lee Rose of Johns Hopkins University immediately challenged Haley, reminding him that Joffrey was not the bucolic pastoral village in which white men never set foot. Although the villagers had heard fearful rumors of two-bar slavers. Indeed, Joffrey was a white trading village. To white military posts were within a mile of it, and the villagers were collaborators in the slave trade, helping whites capture slaves from points upriver. Wow. That's crazy. Rose and Ottaway brought an admission from Haley that he had taken literary license. He succeeded in fact that he had purposely fictionalized his description of Joffrey because blacks long have needed in the hypothetical Eden like white have. In the years since, this has been Haley's customary response to criticism. Challenges to the authenticity of his saga are taken as a public denial of racial oppression of the special needs of the oppressed. After the appearance of the article by Ottaway and Rose, for example, Haley retorted that the reporter had made a cheap shot, like saying that Anne Frank never existed or that the whole Nazi thing was a hoax. Let me say this, right? Let me go back to this. This is what I want to say. On that point right there, if you think about it, that's is the exact same tactic that Jabari, Sarnetta, all these other people use when we say that slavery happened in reverse, or we say that the numbers don't add up. Nobody ever proves otherwise. They always make a point to say that we trying to say slavery never existed. You dig what I'm saying? This is what they do. They quickly say that because they want to shame you into questioning the information that they present. It's the same thing that Alex Sadie was doing. The same thing. If you question what they've been saying all these years, they'll try to shame you as if you're not supposed to question it. You're supposed to just accept everything you've been told throughout history. Take it in wrong with it. You're not supposed to question nothing and use your mind and use any type of critical thinking skill. This is what these guys are doing. So I just want y'all to think about that for a minute. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. This is a story that we've been told our whole life about roots. That all black people come from Africa. We in the slave trade. We've never seen any documentation to prove it. We have never seen any documentation to prove that. We've just accepted it. And now that some of us are starting to question the information, now that some of us are starting to look at the numbers, they want to shame us and to just continue to accept it. It's crazy. Just think about that. Just think about that for a minute, man. It's like saying that Anne Frank never existed or that the whole Nazi thing was a hoax. In a 1979 article, whose author again rebutted criticism by saying that what really upset me most was that also by implications it clearly sought to impugn the dignity of Black Americans' African heritage. That's something else that Pan-Africans do too. They always talk about, because when you question it, you just hate to be African. You just hate to be African. Why are you trying to tell our people we're in Africa? They doing the same shit to this day. The exact same tactics they doing to this day. That's how I know these dudes are suspect. However, the Black journalists and historians who appear among Haiti's critics take a different view. Film critic Regina Collier has written, "I think that I would give almost anything I own to know who my African ancestors were." And here is a man who had the oral tradition, the financial resources, the contacts, and the determination to find out this very thing, and he blew it. I believe that Haiti sold out, capitalized on his Negro-ness. I doubt that he was ever committed to much beyond his own ego. Otherwise, he would never have permitted such a travesty on our history. All genealogists must agree with Ms. Call's further statement. History is sacred. If we lose our history, we lose ourselves. The genealogists cannot afford to tamper with historical truth, to whitewash his own people, to idolize their role in society. He cannot, in his writings, distort that society to fit whatever purpose he hoped his literary license will achieve. Too often, such distortions are incorporated into the next conventional history. As Fofana's tale of Kunta Kinte has now been incorporated into African oral accounts. See, although they was lying, now it's been incorporated into African oral accounts. And I'm gonna show you another one. I can do you one better. When we talk about historical oral accounts, guess what they have in Africa right now? They have a place that they changed to Kunta Kinte Island. So Africans even named a fictional a place after a fictional character. But the name of that island used to be St. Joseph's Island. Some Africans is in on this shit too. Almost all genealogists can cite similar examples in America in which a fabrication has been repeated so often. Listen to this. Almost all genealogists can cite similar examples in America in which a fabrication has been repeated so often it is believed to be true. What has been repeated to us so often that most of us believed it? Africa. The fact that all Negroes come from Africa. It's been repeated to our people so much, we think that it's true. See, man, look, any such attempt to distort history ultimately obscures one's own heritage, and it can do so to such a point that one never finds the ancestor whom he seeks. For these, as well as other reasons, Haiti did not find his roots in Africa. It said, it said, for all, it said, for these and as well as other reasons, Haley did not find his roots in Africa, but what of America? This is the question that Elizabeth will address in the next half of this paper. In 1977, Reader's Digest article, My Search for Roots, Alice asserted through plantation records, wills, census records, I documented bits here, shreds there. By 1967, I felt I had the 7 generations of U.S. side documented. In actuality, the same plantation records, wills, census, legal conveyance, and other records categories touted by Haley not only fail to document his story, they contradict every statement of Afro-American lineage. Damn! You listen to that? Are y'all listening? Are y'all listening to this? He said but Haley not only failed to document his story, they contradict every statement of Afro-American lineage prior to the Civil War that appears in Roots. While the fictionalized format in which Roots is presented provides its readers with almost no evidence of sources of methodology. No evidence of methodology. But don't you always hear these Pan-Africans, the Dr. Mahats, and all these different people, the immigrant Garfield, all these guys always talking about methodology. But this is what they're using as a source. You always hear Jabari talking about people with poor methodology, but he's using this source. And they said Al-Sayles had no evidence of sources of methodology. See, man, it's just crazy. Haley's various writings have outlined some of his thought, progression, and research procedures, and they have spotlighted a number of problems that are still far more common to genealogy than one might hope, principally illogically reasoning. Inadequate historical background, insufficient research, or inadequate use of records consulting, the warping of documented facts to fit a specific need, careless note-taking, and poor to non-existent documentation. See? Poor to non-existent documentation. Bridging the ocean. Roots approach to solving the classic identity problem. According to Haley's family tradition, his African ancestor, Kente alias Toby, was brought to America through the port of Annapolis. Of course, tradition does not supply the year. The port records do not identify by name the forced immigrants from Africa, as they sometimes do with forced immigrants. I don't know why you forced immigrants from Europe. However, it is Haley's contention that Kente arrived in Annapolis in 1767 above the Lord Legionnaire, and he based this decision upon 2 factors. First, Fofana's account of Kente as captain held that it occurred the year the king's soldiers came to Gambia. Second, at Lloyd's of London, supposedly Haley found shipwrights lying unopened and long abandoned cartons, which revealed that one Colonel O'Hare brought a troop of soldiers to the Gambia. In 1767, the same year, that ship sailed from the Gambia landing with slaves bound for the port of Annapolis. Roots has scarcely wrote off the presses before questions arose of the validity of Haiti's African American connection. Lloyd's of London notified the genealogical world that it has no long forgotten records of any kind, no unopened cards, no ship roll, no record would identify the cargo of the specific vessels. They ensured in that area. Reporter Ottaway further pointed out that Haiti misdated the arrival of Colonial O'Hara, not O'Hara's forces, and that they did not arrive the same year. They did not arrive. Hold on for a second, Paul. They did not arrive the same year that Legionnaire sailed. Moreover, the first group of King's soldiers actually arrived in Gambia in 1661, 106 years before the group of King's soldiers which Haiti fixed upon, according to Ottaway. When I asked Haley why out of all these King's soldiers he should have selected those under O'Hara, he said it was because his researchers in America had indicated that his ancestors must have been shipped to Annapolis, Maryland before 1768. The only ship he could trace which had made the voyage from Gambia to Annapolis during the 1760s had done so in 1767. In other words, Haiti simply found an African event to fit his American research. See, I'm gonna show y'all something. This is with that issue right there. I'm gonna tell you somebody else that I know did that. Jabari did that. On one of occasion, he was on. I want to say one of these streams. It was either Sanel channel. He was over there with Immigrant Garfield's channel, right? And he was saying that his family told him that his people was Arawak, right? But the DNA don't show it. That's what he said. But later on, he come back with a story saying that his family told him something about some Guinea gem and Guinea Conakry, whatever they said. And this was what's supposed to be one of his ancestors that they call Guinea gem. And he put that out. I don't know what he did. He went and found a piece of history, something that may have happened in Africa or there was some record of, and he just added that to his timeline. And then when he came to some other channel where he was having a discussion with Phoenix Moon, he showed that. You dig what I'm saying? But he had already said previously that his people told him that his people was Arawak. You dig what I'm saying? So because he wanted to be embedded into this African thing, and he know people was having questions about his own lineage, he had to make something up to convince people. So he lied about his lineage. He lied. On the other hand, the evidence also suggests the opposite. That Haiti's earliest American research was based upon his predetermination that the 1767 ship was the one which carried his ancestors to its hold, according to Haley. I went to Richmond, Virginia. I poured through microfilm legal deeds filed with Spotsylvania County, Virginia after 1676 when the Lord Legionnaire had landed. In time I found a lengthy deed dated September 5th, 1768, and with John Waller and his wife and transferred the William Waller land and goods, including 240 acres of farmland, and then on the second page, and also one Negro man slave named Toby. My God, Haley exclaimed at that point. And every genealogist knows the ecstasy of such a movement when one first finds in print the name of a long sought ancestor. However, the competent genealogist does not fall into the snare of embracing as his own any man of record who happens to bear a name identical to the one he seeks, until he gathers all possible evidence, and unless preponderance of that evidence weighs in favor of this being one and the same man. At this point, Haley again failed in the identification of his African ancestors. According to the tradition he sought to prove, Kente Elias Toby belonged to one John Waller, from whom he escaped in punishment. Now listen, I want y'all to pay close attention. That is the next couple paragraphs, because it's going to really expose some crazy shit. In punishment, a portion of his foot was cut off. The document which Haley found does not show one Toby in possession of one John Waller. However, if Haley had arbitrarily chosen the date 1767 for Toby's arrival, or if he had even tested the accuracy of his theory by searching pre-1767 records, he would have discovered that this Waller slave Toby appeared in at least 6 documents prior to the arrival of the legionnaire. Clearly, if Kente was captured in 1667, he was not the Waller slave Toby. Now, see? He lied. Wait till y'all hear about when they get to the so-called slave masters at that time, what they say. Dig this out. When interviewed by a New York Times reporter on his reaction to Haley's saga, one noted Yale professor dismissed the allegation of such errors in Rusi as unimportant. Rusi said it was a statement of someone's search for identity. It would seem to me to retain a good deal of impact, no matter how many mistakes the man has made. See, so no matter how flawed he was, they still want to accept it. Be careful when white folks jump on board behind a Negro continuously. They got something in the mix. You dig? In any genealogy, there are bound to be a number of mistakes. However, among competent genealogists, such lax expectations from our science are no longer acceptable. Errors in identity matter a great deal from a genealogical standpoint, and a single error of identity can invalidate an entire lineage. Remember, I was just telling y'all that. I was just saying that. In the case of Haley's roots, there are a number of such genealogical errors, each of such magnitude that even alone it could not be overlooked. The cumulative effect is damning. For example, according to Roots, Toby remained celibate for 20 years after his arrival in America. In short, a whole generation. Dr. Waller favored Toby over some 24 or more slaves that he owned, and Toby was chosen to drive the doctor as he made his rounds of the country. In 1789, Toby married Belle, the cook for Waller's mansion house, and in 1790 bore a daughter, Kizzy, who grew to maturity on Dr. Waller's main plantation. Now dig this. Historical evidence reveals a far different story. Tax rolls clearly show that William Waller owned no mansion house for Belle to cook in. So he didn't even own the fucking house. He owned no buggy for Toby to drive. He owned no plantation in this period. And no slaves. And the guy didn't even own any fucking slaves. He didn't own any slaves. You dig what I'm saying? So this dude, actually just made all this stuff up. That's the point that I wanted to make to y'all. But let's continue, man. Let's go deeper. Let's get into it. There is no indication that he practiced medicine at all past 1770, which was a mere 3 years after Kente supposedly arrived. What the evidence does suggest is that Dr. Waller was ill and incapable of caring for himself, much less for others. When his father's estate was settled, 4 years before the arrival of the Legionnaire, which is the ship that Haley's ancestors supposedly came on, Dr. Waller deeded his entire inheritance to his brother John, who in turn was to provide him with clothes, food, and all necessities. So his brother was supposed to take care of him in exchange for the land. But he didn't though. The brother John then proceeded to squander the estate. In 1768, in a document found by Haley, Dr. Waller took back from John all that remained of his inheritance, 240 acres, and a black male named Toby. There is no further record of this slave Toby. And in 1790, Waller sold the last of his land twice in the years that followed. He executed agreements with relatives, promising to give them the inheritance he would one day receive from his mother. And again, in this instance, the conveyance appears to have been made in exchange for their caring for him as a derelict brother had first promised. It is clearly proven that Waller owned no slaves in 1789, when Toby allegedly married Belle, nor in 1790 when Kizzy supposedly was born, nor in 1806 when Waller is accused of selling Kizzy away from her parents. Wow. Not only do these facts destroy the entire substance of nearly 200 pages of Haley's alleged family, it destroys nearly 200 pages of Haley's alleged family history. 200. The whole Whaler Plantation episode, but it also calls into question the very parentage of Kizzy, given the fact that Waller at no time owned a slave named either Belle or Kizzy, and given the fact that Kizzy was allegedly born 22 years after Toby's last known existence. It is possible to accept the assertion that Toby was Kizzy's father. Man, this shit is deep, man. I'm going in for y'all today, man. I'm going in. What I want y'all to do, man, is like, share, subscribe, man, and get this out. Share it to as many people as y'all can. It's time for us, man, to put an end to this nonsense, you did? So like, share, subscribe for more content coming on the way. Now let's get to it. Getting to the roots of fiction, i.e. the transformation of genealogical facts into sellable fiction. If, however, one assumed that Haley neglected to use the tax rolls and therefore did not discover that Waller was propertyless for nearly all of his adult life, one still cannot justify certain deliberate distortions of the evidence which Haley did uncover. According to Roots, in 1786, Wallace's brother John fathered a daughter called Missy Ann, who became Kizzy's childhood playmate, who eventually betrayed the faith of her black friend. 3 years later, allegedly, Dr. Wallace drafted a will in which his slaves to little Missy Ann, on condition that he did not marry first. Country records do yield such a document. Although it was not a will, it was a deed of gift. By the terms of this document, Dr. Wallace promised to his niece and daughter of John, three slaves he expected to receive when his mother died. When his mother died. However, if Dr. Wallace were to marry before his death, then the deed of gift to Anne would be voided. One astounding discrepancy exists between the document and Haley's version. It was actually drafted 22 years early than the date that Haley gave. By the time that little Missy Ann was allegedly born, her father had been dead 11 years. Wow, so by the time after Haley said that she was supposed to have been born, her dad was already dead for 11 years. By the time that Kizzy was born, Miss Ann Wallace had a husband and children of her own. By the time Kizzy was born, Miss Ann Wallace had a husband and children of her own. Such circumstances, there can be no conclusion but that Haley deliberately altered the documented facts, as he did in the case of the village of Jaffer, in order to create a better story and more dramatic stage stereotype and fictionalized injustice that he wanted to depict. There is yet another major problem with Roots, which hinges on a date. A problem that again called paternity into question. According to Roots, on the first month of October 1806, Kizzy helped her sweetheart escape. The following Sunday, a slave trader took her on a 4-day journey to Caswell County, North Carolina, where she was immediately purchased and assaulted by Tom Lee. Simple arithmetic and a perpetual calendar indicate that the alleged rape occurred 15 October 6. It was in the winter of 1806 that Kizzy was delivered of her pecan-colored child, according to Roots. This is surely the shortest pregnancy on record. Again, in the case of Tom Lee and his family, as with William Waller, all documents generated by the Lees contradict every alleged fact and event that make up Haley's portrayal of his family servitude in North Carolina. The character of Tom Lee and his birth family was grossly distorted, as outlined in considerable detail in our article. A simple analysis of the Lee's slave household reveals even more disturbing discrepancies. Various documents exist which identify the slaves of Tom Lee by name, age, sex, and relationship. Not one of the characters in Haley's saga was ever owned by Tom Lee. Again, the only possible conclusions are: one, that Haley research has not revealed the actual name of his ancestors, or two, that his slave progenitors did not belong to the Tom Lee whom he claims as his own forefather. Tom Lee estate file completely negates another major incident within Haley's North Carolina saga. A very emotional episode focusing on Tom Lee's alleged economic disasters of his dispatch of his misbegotten son, Chicken George, and to England to satisfy debtors upon his heartless sales of George's father during his absence, and Lee's ultimate refusal to honor the promise of freedom he had made George before sending him away. We are told that George enticed his father into a drunken stupor and stole his freedom papers before going to search of his lost family. This incident allegedly occurred in the 1850s. Aside from the obvious point that Chicken George's presence in England, where slavery was illegal, won't you tell me, woman, what made your love grow? You telling me that he said that Chicken George was sent to England, but during this time period, slavery was illegal in England? Well, slavery was illegal. Now check this out. Would have won him an automatic manumission on both the English and American law. There remained the fact that Tom Lee died in the winter of 1844 to 1845. Even if Haiti does descend from Lee, the heart-wrenching episode just outlined, which covered many pages, did not occur. Yet again, Haley appears. It appears that Haley purposely fictionalized to use the words he chose for his admission of guilt and gamut. His entire American saga, from enslavement of his family to their emancipation at the close of the Civil War. Haley has called his brand of fiction faction. See, he was called the faction, and he defined this as the presentation of fact in a fictional format. The transformation of his grand passion for truth, and through the passion of dialogue and truth, it is difficult to find any shreds of fact within Haley's faction. See, so they say you can't find no facts in your faction. You just making shit up as you go, and you promote this film to the people as being based on a true story. From a commercial standpoint, Haley's faction has been a success. From a genealogical viewpoint, it is totally irresponsible. Founding historians deal with real people and have a moral obligation to portray their subjects honestly. Literary license does exist, and it can be applied to works of fiction. But when a genealogy, as Alexander has proclaimed himself to be, publishes his roots, he does not have the right to villainize or slander the Tom Lees or Ann Wallers or John Doe's who coexisted with his ancestors. The chasms that exist between roots and legitimate family history go far deeper than these few problems. The litany of other genealogical and historical discrepancies exist, embracing almost every character within Haley's saga and most of his caveats. Many, though certainly not all, of these were outlined in our prior article. Professor Rose's work cited other historical faults past within roots, and they pointed out that the anachronisms are petty only in that they are details. They are too numerous to chip away at the similitude of central matters in which it is important to have full faith. Still, amid Haley's melange of misinformation and misconstrued circumstance, some threads of genealogical evidence are visible. Among those discussed in our articles are two very exciting ones. A historical connection does exist between the Lee family of North Carolina and the Wallers of Virginia. If Haley had pursued this, some, if not all, of his genealogical powers might have been solved. Haley attempted to bridge the genealogical gap between these two families by inventing a slave trade who took Kizzy from one state to the other. Apparently, he did not discover or did not recognize the significance of the fact that both Tom Lee's father and his father-in-law were natives of Spotsylvania County, Virginia, where the Lee and Waller families were neighbors. In fact, the grandparents of Mrs. Tom Lee were the original patentees of the tract of 240 acres with Dr. Waller and his brother John later conveyed to each other, together with the slave man Toby. However, if the legendary Kizzy was taken to North Carolina by the Lee family at the time they removed to Spotsylvania, then Kizzy was at least a generation older than which Haley shows. This may explain the apparent gap between the last birthday of Kizzy and the last known record of their alleged father. Documents do exist showing that the Wallers owned a crippled slave. However, the time period was a decade before the arrival of Legionnaire, and the name of the slave was not Toby, it was George, a name that was popular in Haley's ancestral line. While Kizzy's son was supposedly called Chicken George, this earlier Waller slave was called Hopping George, a nickname that would be quite appropriate for a slave who had lost half of one foot. It is also important to know that none of the 6 documents found about Toby mention any physical infirmity or deformity. Although such references were made time and again in the Waller records, moreover, the state of Colonel William Waller, father of Dr. Waller, to whom Hopping George belonged, and those in whose household Toby appears to have been born, also contained a slave woman, Isabel, whom Colonel Waller had inherited from his own father. In short, various names connected to Haley's family tradition do appear together in history, and certain key slave names do appear in the Waller household, but they did not match the personal identities, relationships, time frame which Haley invented for them in his attempt to mold real people from the skeletal remains of his family tradition. Alright, page 13, man, we're going in. The long-range impact of roots upon history and genealogy. In the years that have elapsed since Haley's settlement of the plagiarism suit filed against him, the popularity of roots among scholars and academicians has drastically waned. Eugenia Carly best expressed the disillusionment of Mahal ranks when she wrote, "The suit was settled out of court with Haley admitting indiscretions on the part of his research assistants." What research assistants? I was given the impression that the work was based on Haley's own quest. And how come he was unknowing enough to let them get away with copying part of this white man's work? There have been several accounts of how material from other authors or fictionals could find its way into Haley's allegedly factual account of his personal quest for roots. Vague references to slips of paper given to him by enthusiastic audiences at his lectures are to be calling, and this will tell you by graduate students who supposedly did not know their sources had to be identified. Such explanations are at once incredible. It is difficult to believe that at any American university there could exist a body of graduate students who are not aware that research has to be documented. However, it is very easy to comprehend how a neophyte genealogist who has not had academic training in historical research or methodology can gather reams of unorganized notes on scattered pieces of paper, all devoid of documentation. One can make an excursion through any genealogical library and still find people enthusiastically scribbling notes on or xeroxing pages on our publications without making adequate notations of source. Widespread negative publicity which Roots received after the initial burst of public enthusiasm has to a great extent been good for genealogy. It has made American researchers more cautious, more diligent, and more responsible. The dabblers in genealogy who are more likely to watch Roger Mudd's newscast than to read Richard Dawkins' cite their sources have nonetheless been made cognizant of problems that can result from sloppy, non-note-taking, and inadequate documentation. More serious genealogical hobbyists have followed press news stories of Haiti's long years of research, and they have deduced that the number of years in which one pursues genealogy is far less meaningful than the quality of the work that is done. See, this is a point that I want to make too on this particular topic right here, where it says, wait a minute, okay, the number of years in which one pursues genealogy is far less meaningful than the quality of the work that is done. I want to make that point, but I'm gonna kind of impose that on history. Because you always hear people like this Negro Jabari always talking about he's been studying African history for 25, 30 years. Don't mean nothing if the quality of your research is poor. If you're only going along with information because you have an emotional attachment to it, affinity to it, it clouds your judgment, and you just missing whole scopes of history simply because you don't want to take the time out, or you want to continue to have this euphoria or this feel-good moment in history. It's the same thing. You can't do that, man. You can't reject information just because it goes against what you believe in. We're not supposed to do that. Yet, negative legacies left by Roots still persist. They probably will always persist. Like Miss Collier, we fear that the people of whom Roots could have meant the most will be those who are the most damaged by it, which will be black people. Roots means so much to us, but we damaged by it because it gave us a false history. It gave us false history that we was told that happened to all of us, and it's not true. We are the most damaged by Roots, but yet we still celebrate this fact. In a 1972 article in the Genealogical Helper, Haiti billed himself as probably the person most knowledgeable about black genealogy. See, even after all this shit, when he was called out on his behalf, he still got this ego as if he's the best at it. Same thing with Jabari. No matter how much information, you still think you're the best, you're a great researcher. You're flawed and you're a liar. Point blank, period. And in the years since He has, according to his own account, delivered thousands of lectures to college audiences and advised countless numbers to seek their own roots. This nigga's crazy. The fledgling field of black genealogy is in need of role models. Roots built itself as exactly that. The story of 25 million black Americans. When Haley asserts that his saga isn't the story of a family, it's the saga of a people, because I have charted the history of every black American. He is believed by the masses who need a figurehead in whom they can take pride, such as Kunta Kinte, instead of staring fetches of yesteryear's literature. You could have did something better. You know what I'm saying? You could have wrote something about a superhero. You could have did something. You could have wrote a story about King Philip. You know what I'm saying? You could have wrote this stuff about the Yamasee or anything. You know what I'm saying? But instead you had to lie to the people. And now all our people is fucked up in the head because of it. However, society has now merely traded stereotypes, because stereotypes are the essence of Haley's novel. Listen to this. However, society has now merely traded stereotypes, because stereotypes are the essence of Haley's novel. Wow, that's profound. That's profound, man. The stereotype is that we all come from Africa. That's a stereotype. It's not true. Failing to find his real past, he fictionalized, drawn from an already published work, the ideas and the elements that he preferred to believe. Instead of finding real information, he wanted to dig into a fictional novel, a false novel already published, yet in perpetuating his own unschooled concept of black history. Unschooled concept of black history, and encouraging the masses to accept those stereotypes as the ultimate experiences of black America. Whoo, man, that's deep. Yeah, perpetuating his own unschooled concept of black history and encouraging the masses to accept these stereotypes as the ultimate experience of black America. He has negated in the popular mind much of the legitimate and revolutionary research that is being done by the nation's best black historian. As a professional genealogist and a historian living in the Deep South and working in the field of black family history, we have noticed in the post-Roots era a distinct shift in the psyche of black genealogical enthusiasts among those with whom we come in contact. A research for the origin of one family surname is guided as by Herbert Gutman's study of black naming pattern. The more and more often by Haley's generalization that slaves always took the master's name. See, that's where they got that from. That's what they got that from. That's false. They say, and more often, Haley's generalization that slaves always took the names of their masters and changed their name every time they were sold. See, he's saying that that's bullshit. We didn't take our fucking master's name, man. That's not true. The research concept of slavery mirror Haley's naivete rather than the extensive econometric study of Robert Fogel and Stanley Eagleman. The black genealogy of today seems also more prone to share Haley's tenacious faith in the sanctity of his family's tradition and less willing to explore clues or accept documents that might question the validity of what he has been told. After all, Mr. Haley's family tradition proved true, every word of it. Why not mine? Librarians and archivists as well have observed an ingrained frustration, a sense of ultimate fertility on the part of some black patrons who fear they will not be successful because they cannot afford to go to Africa as Haley did. Yes, Roots filled a need that black America has long felt, a yearning for a literary hero with whom it could identify. It is unfortunate that this need was filled under the guise of legitimate family history. See, this is my issue too. If you wanted to give us something, you could have made something up without it, created a character without it being presented to us as being based on a true story. That's the problem that I have with it. It was presented to us as being based on a true story, to come to find out it was all made up. It was invented by him. The extent to which this work of fiction negatively affects our fields depends upon all of us, principally upon the degree to which we adopt and adhere to the standards of research, documentation, the publication that are set before us by the National Genealogical Society, the American Society of Genealogists, the Association of Professional Genealogists, and their fellow societies of the same caliber. The issue of standards is the ultimate genealogical issue that Roots was raised, and it is the ultimate issue that confronts the field of genealogy, and it seeks to progress past the Roots era. Wow. Say, man, here go all the sources. Here go all the sources for this article. All the sources. He sourced this thing out. Alright. So, there we go. The National Genealogical Society recorded. Man, y'all can go copy this and print this up and things like that, man. Alright, man. Yeah, man. So what I want y'all to, my purpose for bringing that to the light, man, is to show y'all that, look, we've been lied to. We've been lied to a long time. Our whole lives we've always told that we all come here on the bottom of a slave ship. And what helped us to come to that conclusion is the movie Roots. You still have Negroes still using Roots as being based on a true story. All these so-called Pan-Africans is using it. And when people come out and bring that out, other Pan-Africans don't call them out on it. They don't call them out on it. They don't call them out on that shit. You dig what I'm saying? And that's the problem. So what we have to do is that we got to start taking our family's history serious. We got to take the time out to we have to take the time out to do it right, man. And don't just jump on board with stuff because it makes us feel good. That goes for the Aboriginal brothers and sisters too, man. You do yourself a disservice if you are not taking the time out to really research your family history, or if you just taking pieces because you find a name it goes along with something. You may have other things that come into play. You know what I'm saying? That pushes that idea out, or that family member, that supposed family member, out of the equation. You dig what I'm saying? For instance, I was researching a family member on my great grandmother's side, and Well, not my grandmother's, my father's mother's line. I'm been digging in her information lately, and when I was finding out her name, the name would show up when I put it into the database. But I only knew my grandmother's one sister. I didn't know she had other sisters. So when I looked into the database, I seen her name, and I saw my Aunt Rosetta's name, right? But I wasn't sure because I didn't know who these other people were. I'd never heard of them before. So I contacted my brother, my older brother, and he had him contact one of our older cousins that was there, that who my auntie raised, and he was there when we was children, when we was young boys. You know what I'm saying? We was kids, 5, 6 years old, and we be playing over there. He was there. So anyway, the other names that was there, I asked my brother, say, ask him if this is the people. Does she have any more sisters? And he said, he got back with me. He said, yeah, he sent me the names, and those was the exact same names on that list. Now, I didn't tell him these names. That's how I knew that these people were related to me. You dig what I'm saying? So I didn't want to just take something because I saw her name on there, and saw her name, and I saw my Aunt Rosetta's name on there. I knew them. I grew up around them. I used to go sit with them and everything. I don't want to just take that and just run with it. I wanted to know the truth. So I waited, and then I got what I was looking for. So what I'm saying, man, look, Alex Haley, Roots, these Pan Africans, man, they've been lying to y'all for so long, man. They've been lying, and they're arrogant about their lying. You feel me? And they're arrogant about their ignorance. So what I'm saying to y'all is this, right? We as a people, if we want to be serious about our history, then we need to get serious and quit believing everything we hear, and take the time out and just do the work. You dig what I'm saying? Well, this is a struggle zone, man. Peace out, man. I'm be putting this up and upload this thing or whatever soon. So that's what's up, man. That's what's up. So what we gonna do, we gonna keep doing. I got some other information, man, that I'm finna really get into, and I'm gonna explain to y'all about how these so-called Native Americans, how they really got here. You dig what I'm saying? How the fuck they really got here? These Mongoloids, I mean. It's a question that need to be answered, and I'm still doing more research on it, man. So, yeah, man, that's what it is.